We here at the Sports History Network proudly partner with 26 podcasts, all revolving around the history of sports. But did you know that many of our hosts were sports history authors way before they started their shows? It's true. We've got Joe Ziemba, host of When Football Was Football, Joe Zagurski, host of Pro Football in the 1970s, Mark Morthier, host of Yesterday's Sports, Tommy Phillips, host of Lombardi Memories, and Scott Adamson, co-host of From the 55-Yard Line. All these authors have many books for you to choose from. To check them out, go to our website at sportshistorynetwork.com/sportshistorybooks. Pick up your copy today. Soundtrack provided by Kevin MacLeod of filmmusic.io.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.
Hello again, I'm John Gidley, and welcome to another trip into the football attic. Today we're going to talk about the short but highly productive career of running back Gale Sayers, who passed away this week at the age of 77. On the surface, the Kansas Comets' career numbers may not look spectacular, especially compared to the statistics of who we consider the greatest running backs of all time, Jim Brown, Emmitt Smith, Walter Payton, Barry Sanders, etc. To appreciate Gale Sayers' career, you have to do a deeper dive into game-by-game stats, highlights, and stories of adversity. After 3 productive seasons at the University of Kansas, including a 1962 game against Oklahoma State in which he ran for 283 yards, Sayers had a choice to make. He was taken with the 4th overall pick of the 1965 NFL Draft by the Chicago Bears, and was also the 5th selection of the AFL Draft by the Kansas City Chiefs. Given the opportunity to play for legendary coach George Halas, Sayers chose Chicago. His first 2 NFL games were underwhelming, but in Week 3, playing the eventual champion Packers in Green Bay, Sayers introduced himself to pro football. Despite a 23-14 loss, he totaled 184 yards with 2 touchdowns. 2 weeks later, in a 45-37 win at Minnesota, Sayers scored not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 touchdowns, all of them coming in the second half. Trailing 23-17 in the third quarter, he caught an 18-yard pass from quarterback Rudy Bukic for his first score. Fran Tarkenton then ran for a touchdown to give the Vikings the lead once again. Sayers responded by catching another touchdown pass from Bukic, this one from 25 yards out. Minnesota scored yet again on a 4-yard run by Tommy Mason. Now trailing 37-31, Sayers took the ensuing kickoff 96 yards to the house, putting the Bears ahead to stay. Just for good measure, he later tacked on a 10-yard touchdown run, his 4th and final score of the game. After scoring in 4 of his next 5 games, Sayers ended his rookie season with a bang, beginning in Week 11 at the Giants. In a 35-14 win, Sayers ran for 113 yards and 2 touchdowns. The next week, in a 13-0 win at the Baltimore Colts, he ran for 118 yards and a score. These were both great performances, but both would pale in comparison to what he did on December 12, 1965. That day, the Bears hosted the San Francisco 49ers at muddy Wrigley Field. The first points of the game came in the first quarter, when Bukic threw an 80-yard touchdown pass to Sayers. In the second quarter, Sayers scored twice more on runs of 21 and 7 yards. If that wasn't enough, he ran for 2 more touchdowns in the third quarter, one from 50 yards out, and another coming on a 1-yard plunge. By the midway point of the fourth quarter, the game was well out of reach, with Chicago leading 47-20 and Sayers having scored 5 touchdowns. But he wasn't done yet. Fielding a punt from the 49ers' Tommy Davis at his own 15-yard line, Sayers weaved through every San Francisco defender, got blocks from his fellow Bears, turned on the afterburners, and raced 85 yards for his 6th touchdown of the game. The final score was Chicago 61, San Francisco 20. Sayers accounted for 36 of those points and finished with 336 all-purpose yards. Perhaps the most amazing statistic of his performance was that he ran for 4 touchdowns on only 9 carries, meaning that he scored every other time he ran the ball. In the next week's regular season finale, Sayers came back down to earth, only totaling 157 all-purpose yards and a single touchdown in a home loss to Minnesota. When all was said and done, in 14 games, Sayers totaled 2,325 all-purpose yards with 22 touchdowns, all as a rookie. Naturally, he won Offensive Rookie of the Year honors from the Associated Press, but he did not win Most Valuable Player. That honor instead went to Jim Brown, who had less all-purpose yards than Sayers, but nearly equaled his total touchdowns with 21. This would turn out to be Brown's 9th and final NFL season, before suddenly calling it a career at age 29. Gale Sayers never again had a game that resembled his clinic against the 49ers, but then again, no other running back has. Despite scoring only 12 touchdowns in 1966, 10 less than in 65, he actually totaled even more all-purpose yards. Here are some of his game totals from his sophomore season. 241 in a Week 7 home win over Los Angeles, including a 93-yard kickoff return for a touchdown. 202 the next week in a Monday night loss at the St. Louis Cardinals. 237 in a Week 12 home defeat of Atlanta, and 339 in the last game of the year, a home win over Minnesota. You think 2,325 all-purpose yards in 1965 was a great season? How about 2,498 in 1966? This would be the year he won MVP, right? Unfortunately, he came up short yet again. Instead, the MVP was Bart Starr, who led the Green Bay Packers to a win in the first ever Super Bowl that season. Despite just 14 touchdown passes, Starr only threw 3 interceptions all year. In 1967, Sayers began to show slight signs of regression. After all, he had just totaled over 4,800 yards in his first 2 seasons. His total yardage in his third year dropped to 1,689, but he scored 12 touchdowns once again and turned in a classic Sayers performance in a Week 12 game in San Francisco against his old punching bags, the 49ers. He ran for a touchdown and returned both a kickoff and a punt for scores, finishing the day with 233 yards and 3 TDs. On November 3, 1968, Sayers ran for 205 yards and added 46 yards on a kickoff return in the Bears' 13-10 win at Green Bay. The next week, playing at home against San Francisco, Sayers was tackled by the 49ers' Kermit Alexander and tore his ACL, MCL, and his meniscus, all on one tackle. A devastating injury like this would end the career of the average player, but as we know by now, Gale Sayers was no average player. That offseason, he completed a strenuous rehabilitation program with the help of teammate Brian Piccolo, who would replace Sayers in the starting lineup. Piccolo would die from cancer the next year at age 26, and his story would be made into a TV movie in 1971, Brian's Song, starring James Caan as Piccolo and Billy D. Williams as Sayers. In 1969, Gale Sayers defied all odds. He overcame his crippling knee injury from the year before and led the NFL in rushing with 1,032 yards. Naturally, a performance like this earned him Comeback Player of the Year honors. Unfortunately, his post-injury success could not be sustained. He only played a combined 4 games in the next 2 seasons and retired in 1971 at age 28. He had already made his presence felt in previous years, however, and this was confirmed in 1977 when he was inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame at age 34. He is still the youngest inductee at Canton. Luckily, his legacy has lived on, thanks in large part to NFL films. A lasting clip of Sayers looks to have been filmed in Los Angeles, prior to one of the 4 Pro Bowls he participated in. Sayers is kneeling on the field as the camera quickly zooms in on his face. He looks into the camera and says simply, "Give me 18 inches of daylight. That's all I need." Thanks for joining me for this trip into the football attic, and I hope to see you again next week. In the meantime, check out all the other great podcasts here on the Sports History Network, and follow me on Twitter at JFG Sports. Until next time, this is John Gidley.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.
We at the Sports History Network are thrilled to work with our sponsors and partners. With their support, we are able to produce great content for you. The other cool thing is most of our sponsors and partners offer discounts to pass along to our fans. So if you go to the sportshistorynetwork.com/sponsors page, you'll find Row 1, Royal Retros, Play Classic, Thrive Fantasy, and Mega Seats. All of these offer great discounts. Specifically at Row 1, you can save 15% at the Row 1 Gallery with the code SHN. The Row 1 Gallery includes over 5,200 reproduced sports history prints on a variety of sizes of wood, metal, canvas, acrylic, or poster paper. The Row 1 shop also has thousands of more unique items with retro and historical designs dating back to 1876, including t-shirts and long-sleeve shirts, phone cases and mugs, blankets and pillows, towels, and even shower curtains. With Royal Retros, they're the king of throwbacks. They've got jerseys, shirts, hats, collectibles, and more from defunct leagues and other teams in those leagues. From Play Classic Games, it's sports simulation board games. Just use the code SHN for 10% off your first order. From Thrive Fantasy, It's a daily fantasy sports and esports app for player props. Use the promo code SHN for instant 100% match up to $100. And with Mega Seats, they're tickets with no fees. You can save up to 10% with the code SHN. So check them out on the SportsHistoryNetwork.com sponsors page. That's SportsHistoryNetwork.com/sponsors. The soundtrack is provided by Kevin MacLeod of FilmMusic.io.